What lies beyond the edge of understanding? Beyond the equations of science and the metaphors of mysticism, we stand here, questioning what we know, daring to imagine what we cannot grasp. This is not a place for answers, but for profound wonder, a space where the limits of reason dissolve and something extraordinary begins to take form. The greatest questions of existence remain unanswered. Who are we? Why does anything exist at all? Science, for all its brilliance, offers methods and measurements, while mysticism whispers truths too vast for words. What if these two approaches, so often seen as opposites, are not enemies but partners, pointing us toward a deeper understanding of reality? Today, we will explore this edge of understanding, a frontier where science and mysticism meet. Let's begin with what we know, or rather, what we think we know. Science is humanity's greatest tool for understanding the world. Through the scientific method, we've unlocked the secrets of atoms, mapped the human genome, and peered into the depths of the cosmos. But knowledge is fragile. The more we uncover, the more we realize how much remains hidden. Take quantum physics, for example. At the smallest scales of existence, particles don't behave like solid objects. They flicker in and out of existence, existing everywhere and nowhere. Physicist Niels Bohr once said, "If quantum mechanics hasn't profoundly shocked you, you haven't understood it yet." Science pushes us to the edge, where certainty dissolves. What lies beyond? Mysticism might suggest that it's not an abyss, but a gateway to a deeper truth. Mysticism does not seek to explain the world in the way science does. Instead, it invites us to experience it differently. It asks us to turn inward, to silence the mind and feel the unity of existence. The Persian mystic Rumi wrote, "You were born with wings. Why prefer to crawl through life?" Mysticism reminds us that reality is more than the sum of its parts. It is not something to be dissected, but something to be lived. It must be experienced directly. Science measures, mysticism marvels, yet both point us toward the same truth, the interconnectedness of all things. There are moments where science and mysticism seem to converge, where their languages, so different, begin to echo one another. Take the idea of interconnectedness. In quantum physics, there's a phenomenon called entanglement, where two particles become so deeply linked that the state of one instantly affects the other, no matter the distance. Albert Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. Mystics too have long described a web of connection. What science describes in terms of particles and fields, mysticism describes in terms of unity and oneness. Could these be two ways of seeing the same truth? Time is another place where science and mysticism meet. Einstein showed us that time is relative, it bends and stretches depending on speed and gravity. Mystics too have long taught that time is an illusion. The Zen master Dogen wrote, "Time is not separate from you, and you are not separate from time." What does this mean? It suggests that past, present, and future are not distinct but part of a greater whole. In moments of deep meditation or awe, we sometimes glimpse this truth, the feeling that time has stopped, or perhaps that we have stepped outside of it. Time, then, is not a river flowing forward, but an ocean in which we are already immersed. Another bridge between science and mysticism is the role of the observer. In quantum physics, the act of observation seems to influence the outcome of experiments. Particles exist in a state of probability until they are observed, at which point they collapse into a specific state. This challenges our very notion of objective reality. Mysticism too emphasizes the power of perception. If reality depends on how we see it, then understanding the universe requires us to understand ourselves. And this brings us back to the edge, the point where science reaches its limits, and mysticism begins to speak. At this edge, we encounter questions that defy answers. What is consciousness? Is it merely the product of brain activity, or something more? What existed before the Big Bang? What lies beyond the observable universe? Science seeks evidence, mysticism seeks experience. But perhaps the truest understanding comes from embracing both. It's important to acknowledge the tension between these two ways of knowing. Science is built on skepticism. It demands evidence and repeatability. Mysticism, by contrast, values the ineffable, the truths that cannot be proven but only felt. This tension is not a weakness but a strength. It challenges us to think deeply, to question our assumptions, and to remain humble in the face of the unknown. As the physicist Richard Feynman said, "I would rather have questions that can't be answered than answers that can't be questioned." Now, let us delve deeper into the paradoxes that lie at the very edge of understanding. Paradoxes that blur the line between reason and mystery, science and mysticism. The paradox of the infinite. Consider infinity, something that, in both science and philosophy, is both a concept and a mystery. In mathematics, infinity is a useful idea, a way to understand numbers beyond all bounds. But how can we truly comprehend infinity? How can we experience something so boundless? The more we study it, the less we understand it. As the philosopher Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel suggested, the finite is only understood in relation to the infinite. What if the infinite isn't a destination we can reach, but a quality inherent in all things? Every moment, every experience might hold within it an infinite depth. The paradox is this: we strive to understand the infinite, yet we must embrace the fact that it can never truly be grasped. The paradox of time's relativity. In science, time is relative. Is the time we experience just a reflection of our relative perspective in the universe? The mystics also wrestle with time's true nature. Zen teachings, for example, suggest that time is an illusion. What matters is the present moment, yet even that moment is fleeting. Time, like the infinite, resists capture. And perhaps, in trying to understand time, we miss the point. It is not about measuring it, but experiencing it. The paradox of the self. Who are you really? Science tells us that we are a collection of atoms, genes, and neurons. But mysticism teaches that we are much more than the sum of our parts. The paradox here is that while science describes us as physical beings, mysticism teaches us that our true nature cannot be defined by the body or the mind. We are both nothing and everything. The question of self is, ultimately, a paradox we cannot answer with certainty, but one that invites endless exploration. So what do we do with this understanding? We learn to live at the edge, to embrace mystery, not as a problem to be solved, but as a gift to be experienced. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, "Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves." Science and mysticism are not opposites. They are two paths leading toward the same horizon. By walking both, we come closer to the truth, not the kind of truth that can be written down, but the kind that can be lived. And so we stand at the edge of understanding, not as scientists or mystics, but as seekers, humbled by the vastness of existence and united in our wonder, because the edge is not the end, it is the beginning.